Hi guys, and welcome back to my channel. The case I'm going to be looking into today is the brutal murder of Bobbie Jo Stinnett. And this was actually a suggested case for me to look into the murder of Lisa Montgomery. So I would like to thank you for that. I'd just like to let you know that I mean no disrespect to anyone I'm going to talk about today. I've got the information off the internet and gathered it into one video for educational purposes. Bobbie Jo was a 23-year-old woman that lived in Skidmore in Missouri in the US. She actually lived with her husband Zeb, who she'd been married to for around about a year at this point. And this couple were kind of childhood sweethearts, and they really did seem like the perfect couple. They were together in school. They decided that just after they graduated they would get married, which they did. And they were generally just really happy with each other. Bobbie was described as a very intelligent person. She was very kind and she was also quite shy by all accounts. But she was also a very trusting lady. Now there's not really much online that I could find about her childhood or her upbringing, but I did find that she had a younger brother with whom she was very protective over, and by all accounts she was very close to him as well as her parents. Bobbie Jo worked in manufacturing, and the pair would go on to kind of set up a dog breeding program from their home. She was very passionate about the dog breed rat terriers. She'd watched her dogs give birth over the years, so she knew what to expect, and they were very much her hobby. Like I said, she was passionate about them. She knew quite a lot of information about them, so she decided that this was the breed that she was going to do the breeding program on. In 2004, Bobbie Jo found out that she was pregnant. Her and Zeb were absolutely over the moon. It was the first child and they were just really excited. And then obviously they set up this dog breeding program which would bring in more money, and this extra cash from obviously selling on the puppies would have come in really handy with a newborn on the way. Now Bobbie Jo also went online and she joined a chat room which was dedicated to the breed of dog that she loved, and this chat room was called Ratter Chatter. Now, it was specifically designed so that people who love that breed can share their knowledge, they can share their problems, they can ask for help, provide recommendations, anything like that to do with the rat terrier breed. And she just generally loved logging into this site and chatting to like-minded people who had the same passion that she did about the breed of dog. So in December of 2004, Bobbie Jo was 8 months pregnant at this point. She would log into the forum, use it very socially. Obviously she'd talk about the dogs, but she'd talk about her excitement of the newborn baby as well. And this baby was due in January. Now, one of the women she actually spoke to on this forum was Lisa Montgomery. Lisa stated that she had a passion for rat terrier breeds and that she also was very heavily pregnant at the time. And she would be expecting her baby due soon, the same as Bobbie Jo. So Bobbie Jo would kind of latch on to Lisa in the sense that they were both going through the same things. They could both speak about the dog breed that they loved, but not only that, they could speak about the worries over the children, their excitement of becoming a new mother, all things like that. They just chatted quite a lot by all accounts. Lisa basically had told the forum that she was pregnant with twins. However, unfortunately, one of these twins actually passed away, and that she was due to give birth to her surviving twin in December. So Bobbie Jo and Lisa's due dates were quite close really. There was only a few weeks in between them. Now, people on the forum began to get suspicious of Lisa quite quickly. So she was so heavily pregnant, but she was posting pictures and things like that online, and she didn't look pregnant in the slightest. She didn't look like she'd put on any weight. She didn't look like she had the round belly. It was just very strange and people found it odd. But Bobbie Jo, like I said, she was quite a trusting woman. She didn't really have any doubt to not believe Lisa. And so they continued their conversations. Now the pair had actually met before in April of 2004. They both attended a dog show in Kansas. I've read that this is the only time that they met and they didn't really engage in much conversation. From what I can gather, I don't think they were speaking at this time, and it was only when obviously they got chatting on the forum that maybe they recognised each other from the show, and then it kind of blossomed from there. Like I said, they were both heavily pregnant. They'd both talk about baby clothes, what they needed to get, their ups, their downs, their concerns, their excitements, the names that they were thinking about calling the children. They'd just share it all because, well, they were both going through the same thing. Or at least Bobbie Jo thought they were. So, still staying in December of 2004, Bobbie Jo's dog actually gave birth to the puppies. And like I said, they'd planned to sell them. So, as anyone would know, when you're going to buy a puppy, you get invited into people's houses, you get to come meet them. You just, I know it sounds odd, but you do let strangers into your own home because they are saying that they want to buy this puppy. So you let them in, and that's what happens. So she'd get a lot of people interested in them, and lots of people would come around and she'd just let them in. Bobbie Jo was heavily pregnant, so she was staying at home at this point anyway, so it came in handy really that she was there to allow these people to come in, and Zeb would obviously go to work and earn money that way. At this point, she was kind of used to people coming in and out of her house looking at the puppies. So when somebody called Darlene Fisher got in touch with her, she didn't suspect anything, like nobody would. Darlene said she lived in Fairfax, which was around about 25 minutes away, and she said that she wanted one of these puppies. They got in touch on the 15th of December over the Ratter-Chatter forum. Darlene said that she wanted one of the puppies. So Bobbie Jo gave her the address, and they said that they were going to meet the following day so she could meet them and pick out the puppy she wanted. The next day comes along. On the 16th of December in 2004, Zeb went to work, and Bobbie Jo was home alone, awaiting for the arrival of Darlene, who showed her interest in the puppy, who was a potential buyer. It was around 2:15 that Bobbie Jo was speaking to her mother on the phone. Her mother was called Becky, and Becky actually arranged to come round to see Bobbie Jo later on that afternoon. She told her that she was waiting for a potential buyer for her puppies, and at around 2:30, there was a knock at the door. Thinking this was Darlene, she obviously told her mother that she had to go, quickly ending the conversation to go and answer the door. And little did Becky know that this would be the last time that she ever spoke to her daughter again. Around an hour later, 3:30 p.m. comes around, and Becky is at Bobbie Jo's house, like they had arranged. She entered the house to find that Bobbie Jo was on the floor, unconscious, lying in a pool of her own blood. And the scene must have been so horrific, so terrifying, and by all accounts there was a lot of blood. There was blood everywhere. So to walk in on your daughter in such a state, it just must have been horrific. Becky stated that Bobbie Jo actually had her fists clenched, and inside these fists she could see strands of blonde hair. So this obviously indicated that there was a struggle. Somebody had tried to attack Bobbie Jo, and obviously she had maybe grabbed the hair, tried to get them off her, pulled some strands out in the process. Like I said, she was 8 months pregnant at the time. So what had happened to her baby? Well, upon closer inspection, Bobbie Jo's stomach had actually been cut open, and the baby was missing. Becky obviously ran to the phone and contacted emergency services, and she would go on to tell them that it looked like her daughter's belly had just exploded. Now, the emergency services rushed to the scene, but unfortunately, despite their best efforts, they couldn't revive Bobbie Jo, and she was pronounced at 4:27 p.m. Her baby, however, was still missing. So the police really did hope that the baby was still alive, like anyone would. She was very close to her due date, 8 months. A baby can quite easily survive at this point. There are so many premature babies that are a lot earlier than that still survive and have a long, healthy life. So it is very, very plausible that the baby did survive. Now, an Amber Alert was issued for the missing child. And if you don't know what an Amber Alert is, it's a message issued out to the public using a child abduction system so that everyone is aware that a child is missing, and it enables people to keep their eyes out, and basically if they see it, have any information, they can contact the police straight away. So this can be very, very useful when trying to find a missing child, because the public all around are keeping their eye out for this kid. But at first, investigators were kind of unsure as to whether to issue an Amber Alert, because, well, an Amber Alert gives you the description of the child, maybe the hair colour, the eye colour, the height, age, even possibly the clothes that they were last known to be wearing. But this was a newborn baby. Nobody obviously knew what the baby looked like. Nobody knew its eye colour, its hair colour, if it had any hair at that point, because some babies are born with very, very little hair. It was just a very, very difficult situation. But the police did decide to do an Amber Alert anyway. And they did everything they could to find this baby. So they would go door to door to all the neighbours and try and see if anyone saw anything suspicious. And one neighbour actually did. They described seeing an old dirty red car parked in Bobbie Jo's driveway. The neighbour knew that it wasn't Bobbie Jo's and didn't really think that it was any of her relatives because, well, she'd never seen it before. So she thought that Bobbie Jo didn't really know this person very well. The news of Bobbie Jo's murder and the kidnap of her, at the time, unborn baby absolutely spread so rapidly. And of course, the people on the Rat Chatter forum found out about it. One user, Diane Sitcar, found out on the news about this horrific crime. She was also quite friendly with Bobbie Jo through Rat Chatter, and they chatted quite often. She said that she was so upset about the news, as anyone would be. So Diane decided that she would go on the forum and she basically scrolled back through all the posts just before Bobbie Jo was murdered to see whether there were anything suspicious. She hoped that she could help in the case in any way possible, and she found the conversation between Darlene Fisher and Bobbie Jo. And as stated, Darlene Fisher was supposed to be going to Bobbie Jo's that very same day. Darlene Fisher's username was Fisher for Kids, and Diane, who was looking through the posts, actually recalls thinking that this was a very, very strange username and that it was kind of a bit creepy, which I do agree with. With this information, she contacted the police and let them know about Darlene Fisher, just in case they needed to speak to Darlene or in case she was actually involved in the crime. So the police went on to look for Darlene Fisher in Fairfax, Missouri, which is where she said she was from. And they quickly found that she didn't exist. Bobbie Jo was actually speaking to someone who had given her a completely false name. The FBI used analysis software to track the IP address as to where these posts were coming from. And they went to trace the IP address to Elisa Montgomery, who lived on South Adams Road, Malvern in Kansas, with her husband, Kevin Montgomery. As you recall, Lisa was a user on Rat Chatter, and she told everyone that she was pregnant, which turned out to be a complete and utter fabrication. So police went to the address. They waited and they were kind of hoping that this dirty red car that the neighbour had seen would turn up. And guess what? It did turn up. Inside the car was Lisa and Kevin, and in Lisa's arms she was holding a newborn baby girl. The officers approached the car, they told them to confirm their identities, and then they asked if they could speak to them inside the house. And of course they asked about the newborn that she was holding in her arms. She went on to tell them the same story that she'd told Kevin and her family. So she said that on the 16th of December, she went out shopping in Topeka, in Kansas, on her own. She, of course, was very heavily pregnant, and her waters broke while she was in a store. She actually went into labour. She was taken to the Birth and Women's Centre in Topeka, where she gave birth to the baby girl who she named Abigail. After giving birth, she called her husband to tell him what had happened, and he went to pick them up. Then they went round showing off their newborn baby girl to all the family and friends. And then the following day, which was the 17th, is when the officers arrived at their door. So obviously the police are gonna try and corroborate Lisa's story. They contacted the Birth and Women's Centre, who told them that they had no record of Elisa Montgomery giving birth there the day before. So straight away they knew that basically Lisa was lying out of her teeth. They told her that they knew she was lying. That's when she broke down and told the officers and her husband the truth. She was the one that had killed Bobbie Jo Stinnett, cut open her womb, and kidnapped her baby and pretended that it was her own child. As you can imagine, Kevin was absolutely shocked, devastated, distraught. He had this baby girl that he thought was his own, and it wasn't. And his wife had actually murdered somebody and cut the baby out of her. He was just absolutely devastated, and you really, really would be. It was such a shock to him. Lisa Montgomery was arrested and charged with kidnapping that resulted in death. The newborn baby was confirmed to be, in fact, Bobbie Jo's daughter through DNA. And she was returned to Zeb Stinnett, her real father. Now, Zeb must have been reeling, so he just lost his life. They were childhood sweethearts. They had been together for quite a long time, and she was murdered in cold blood. Yet, on the other hand, he must have been so relieved that he had his daughter, that she'd survived such a traumatic birth, and that he actually got her back. Zeb went on to name his daughter Victoria Jo Stinnett, and both families were just totally distraught and just shocked by what Lisa had actually done. Like I said, Bobbie Jo's family would have been angry and distraught, but so would Lisa's. Lisa's family wouldn't have had a clue that she was capable of something like that. They would, Kevin as well, they would have all been so shocked and sad, and it's just so traumatic. It's just awful what she did. It really is. So everyone's wondering why Lisa Montgomery did such a terrible thing. I'm going to tell you just a little bit about kind of her background and the circumstances in which she grew up in. So Lisa was born on the 7th of February in 1968, and she was actually 36 at the time of when the case happened. According to sources online, she had quite a horrible childhood, and she was raised in an abusive household. She reportedly was raped and beaten by her stepfather as she was growing up. And when her own mother had found out what he'd been doing, did she try and put a stop to it? Did she kick him out? No. In fact, she threatened Lisa with a gun and told her not to say anything to anyone about it. So Lisa did struggle in life. She struggled with her mental health. She struggled with alcohol addiction. Lisa went on to get married to a man called Carl Boeing, and she went on to have 4 children with him. And after the 4th child, she was advised by doctors to get a tube ligation, which is essentially being sterilised, and it would have been for her own health. So she did have it done, but she obviously wouldn't be able to have any more children. Now, over the next few years, Lisa would fake pregnancies, and she did this quite a few times, and eventually Carl divorced her. It's actually theorised that at the time that this horrible, horrible crime was committed, Carl and Lisa were actually in a family court, I think Carl was trying to get custody of his children, of their children. She was at the time faking a pregnancy with Kevin. And it's believed that Carl would have exposed Lisa and her fake pregnancies. And this time Lisa felt like she actually needed to get a baby to prove that she wasn't faking it. And obviously Kevin, not knowing anything, not knowing that she'd previously faked pregnancies, would have found out that she actually wasn't pregnant and that she was faking it with him too. And people do believe that that is actually why she did this. Now, please don't think I'm coming up with excuses for Lisa. Just because she was abused and raped, which is horrific, doesn't excuse in any way what she did to Bobbie Jo. I just wanted to give you all of the facts. So basically you can form your own opinions, but I am in no way whatsoever excusing what Lisa did. Just because someone suffered in their life doesn't excuse you to make somebody else suffer. And it would never excuse taking someone else's life or destroying someone else's life simply because horrible things were done to you. But it does kind of give us an insight into her mind and her possible motive for committing this disgusting crime. Like I said, after that she met Kevin, she faked another pregnancy. She wore baggy clothes, she searched up ultrasound scans, and she would then print them off. Kevin, the friends and family did believe that she was pregnant. And it probably came to a point in the lie at the point where she was heavily pregnant, but she would obviously never give birth. She would never have a baby at the end, because obviously it was a fabrication, so she needed to find one fast. She then came across Bobbie Jo Stinnett, who was as heavily pregnant as Lisa had been pretending to be. She formulated a plan, a despicable and downright disgusting plan. She went on to make a new profile, Darlene Fisher, and contacted Bobbie Jo to say that she was interested in one of her puppies, when in fact she was only interested in her unborn child. I'm just like to let you know that I'm going to get into the details of how she killed Bobbie Jo, so obviously if you don't want to watch that, then just skip forwards. Lisa arrived at the house around 2:30. Bobbie Jo answered the door. She turned around, and that is when at some point Lisa pulled out a rope and wrapped it around her neck. Now, it's unclear as to whether Bobbie Jo actually recognised Lisa. Like I said, they've been chatting online. They did meet once before at the dog show. I have no idea whether she recognised her, but maybe if she did, she wouldn't have let her in a house so willingly, or because she was expecting Darlene, not Lisa. So I'm not sure about that. But she went on to strangle Bobbie Jo, basically until she stopped struggling and until she was dead. Once she had killed her, she rolled her onto her back and she got out a kitchen knife and began cutting into her stomach. Before she got to Bobbie Jo, she'd watched countless videos on how to perform a cesarean section. So she kind of had an idea as to what she was doing. She cut deeper and deeper until she actually got to the womb, and then she eventually pulled the baby out. She cut the cord and then she left the house, leaving a lifeless Bobbie Jo in a pool of her own blood as she stole away with her baby. And from then on, you guys know what happened after this. I did find it strange that I don't understand where Lisa actually managed to clean herself up. So she's performing surgery, or at least whatever you would call it, on Bobbie Jo. Their seam was covered in blood. Even just putting your hands in and pulling them out, pulling the baby out, you would have been full of blood. So I don't know where she managed to clean herself up, and I couldn't find anything online regarding this, because after that she called Kevin and he picked her up. So whether she left her clothes somewhere or brought a change of clothes knowing that she'd be full of blood, I just don't know. But I just did find it a bit odd. So like I said, Lisa had admitted to the police to her crimes, but then she actually pled not guilty. So of course the case went to trial. And her defence decided to pursue an insanity plea. And this was to avoid the death penalty. Specialists would be brought in and say that she was suffering most likely from depression, borderline personality disorder and PTSD. The prosecution argued that yes, she had an abusive childhood, but Bobbie Jo's murder was planned. She was watching videos on how to do a C-section. She'd planned how she was getting into her home. She'd made a fake profile. She planned the entire thing. It wasn't just a spur of the moment, turn up at the door and just murder her that way. She'd planned it all. They argued that her motive was that if Carl brought up her fake pregnancies in the custody hearing, she would seem unstable and she would lose the custody of her children. So she had to get a baby to prove that her pregnancy wasn't fake. After 5 hours of deliberation, the jury returned with a guilty verdict of murder on the 22nd of October 2007, which was nearly 3 years after the murder had actually occurred. They recommended that she receive the death penalty for her crimes. And on April 2008, she actually did receive the death penalty as a sentence. Today, I believe she is 52 years old and is still on death row, awaiting her execution. She's tried to appeal many times but hasn't been successful. Bobbie Jo Stinnett was laid to rest and over 400 people attended her memorial service. Looking into this case, I couldn't actually believe what Lisa did. I really can never understand how someone could go around to someone's house, kill someone and then cut out their unborn child. That is a serious another level of sickness. It's just so utterly disturbing and really, really heartbreaking. Bobbie Jo was so young, she was only 23. She was so excited to spend her life with her husband and to meet their daughter, and she never got that chance. I can't imagine the pain that her family and friends must have felt over the terrible loss of Bobbie Jo. If you have any more cases you'd like me to look into, please do let me know and I will look into them for you. Anyway guys, that's all I have today on the case of Bobbie Jo Stinnett. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, bye!